Last week, California Governor Gavin Newsom begged residents in his state to avoid charging their EVs in an effort to keep the power grid from crashing during a heat wave. The irony is Newsom signed legislation a week earlier that would ban the sale of gas-powered cars by 2035. Our next guest, Joel Kotkin, writes in Newsweek that these electric car mandates are nothing less than a war on the working class, since the price of EVs will raise basic costs and give bargaining power to China, who produces most materials needed for EVs. Joel Kotkin joins us now to discuss further. Welcome, Joel.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So walk us through the argument. I think, we're used to thinking of the Democrats, the side of, environmentalism as the side of the little guy, the working class. Walk us through the argument you're making here about why that's not the case.
Well, the problem has been that the Democratic Party, particularly here in California, has adopted a model, if you will, which is basically climate is the only thing really that matters. And the way we're going to deal with the negative economic side is we're just going to give people more and more subsidies. Newsom's now talking about giving $1,000 to anyone who doesn't have a car. Now, we know from research that having a car is one of the most effective steps, and this is from more progressive organizations, to alleviating poverty. But what we essentially have now is a state that really only follows a particularly draconian climate policy, which hurts the middle and working class, but actually provides enormous opportunities for the very rich. It's not by happenstance that Elon Musk is now the world's richest man.
Replacing the batteries for these vehicles could actually be more expensive than buying an EV itself, depending on the vehicle. According to one family in Florida, a replacement for a 2014 Ford Focus electric racked up a bill of $25,000. Another social media user posted this image of their receipt from a battery change for their Chevrolet Volt, which ended up costing nearly $30,000. So I think the point is that these are not at the current state of innovation. It's a great option for wealthy people who care about the environment. Sure, great. I think it's good technology and will continue to develop. But we're not at the stage where you can just I'll just go get a Tesla. When Democrats and Democratic policies say that that's just how you should deal with the energy crisis, deal with everything going on. Yeah, just get an electric vehicle. But that's still out of reach for a whole lot of working people.
Well, it's not only out of reach; it's terribly impractical for many people. One of the real challenges is going to be in the more industrial area. People of the Port of Los Angeles, they're saying all the trucks have to be electric. Well, they don't have big electric trucks, and they may be virtually impossible to make. Basically, what we're doing is we're imposing a technology that is still developing, and what would be much more sensible is to promote all sorts of low emission technologies, natural gas cars, hydrogen, hybrids. There are many, many ways of getting there. And I think what we've done is we're making an enormous mistake by focusing only on one technology that will essentially become even more expensive as the materials that you need to make them become more expensive. And as you stress the electric grid, there is no way California could absorb all the new EVs that they're planning. There's just no way to do it, given our current grid and given the fact that we've shut down almost all but one nuclear power plant, which frankly is right now keeping Gavin Newsom basically in office, because by keeping that nuclear power plant, we haven't had so far any major outages. How you add all that new demand without breaking the system is beyond me.
So here's my question, Joel. You're not a right winger. You're actually a liberal. I'm coming at this from the left. I read your incredible book that everyone should read, The Coming Neo-Feudalism, with horror because it describes exactly what you're describing here, which is the process by which the left allowed itself to become the side of pushing for policies that hurt the working class, destroy the middle class, and benefit the elites. My question to you is why? How did this happen? How come I can't read you in the New York Times? How come this insight, why is it that the people who are on the left can't see what you see, and are pushing this sort of thing?
Well, I think part of the issue is that, I come from having been worked for the New York Times. I had a monthly column there for a while. I also had one in the Washington Post. Probably I couldn't get arrested at either right now. And I think part of it is that there's been this merger of the upper classes in the journalism world. When I was working at the Washington Post many, many years ago, the guy sitting next to me was a working class Italian guy whose brother was a Baltimore cop, okay? I don't think you're going to see a lot of that in journalism today, particularly at the elite level. So there's a disconnection between the middle and working class and the media. And a very important part of this is geographic. The media has become, oddly enough, more concentrated, particularly the big media, as the internet has evolved. And so what you see is that people who work in that media increasingly are a very small subset of Americans. They live in New York, they live in Washington. Some of them may be in Silicon Valley or in LA. But outside of that, the rest of the country might as well really not exist. And a large number of those people live in a place where you can take a subway to work, where you can walk to work. New York is a very exceptional environment. But it doesn't relate at all to how people live in Riverside, how they live in Westchester County, New York, how they live in the suburbs of Chicago, much less the countryside. So there's this total disconnect between sort of elite opinion and the vast majority. And as the major media has become more elite, it has lost touch with the values of people. I mean, sometimes you look at the LA Times, which I still occasionally write for, and you wonder if any of those writers have ever owned a house, raised a child, had to drive to work. I think there's just this disconnect, and that disconnect is getting larger and larger as not just the media, but the bureaucracy and a large part of the corporate elite have diverged from what would be considered common sense by the vast majority.
I take an electric scooter to work many days of the week, but I also finally bought a car because for the convenience. But it would be insane for me to say like electric scooters are the option for working people, for families, for people who don't live outside cities. Take you forever to get anywhere. Before we let you go, Joel, wanted to get your take. So here you can see an electric bike bursting into flames while charging, and you can see the owner scurries to get water to pour on the fire, which only causes it to create a bigger fire since water reacts violently with lithium, and the fire worsens. What do you make of that?
Well, I think one of the problems that I've been hearing from engineers is the problem of, for instance, what happens if a car blows up in a tunnel? I mean, there are clearly, this is an evolving technology. In a advanced and enlightened capitalist system, we would allow all sorts of technologies to compete, and ones that don't work like that, we reject. That's how you get innovation. That's how you address problems like climate. You don't do it by taking a one-track draconian approach that is really great to keep General Motors alive, but not so great for the American people.
Well said. Well said. Well, Joel, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
More Rising right after this.